mom and go to work. And you know what, Danny? It was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life.
No, I have to make a lasagna for Luke's team dinner. I can't miss that meeting.
I don't know how you do it.
I don't know how you do it.
I don't know how she does it. All those children.
Are you okay?
I'm a wreck.
Good morning. Great to see all of you.
Can't see a thing.
I'm Norah O'Donnell, co-host of CBS This Morning, and I'm pleased to be here with Indra Nooyi. She's the CEO of PepsiCo. Please welcome Indra Nooyi.
Nice to be here.
And Anne-Marie Slaughter, CEO of New America and author of Unfinished Business, Women, Men, Work, and Family. Please welcome Anne-Marie. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be talking to both of you, because I admire you both so much. We just saw those numbers in that video. Anne-Marie, let me start with you. Is it time for a workplace revolution?
It is. I wouldn't come up here and say no. It is. The way I would frame it is it's time to make the revolution that is really making room for care. That we need to expect that all workers, women and men, very much and men, are going to have care obligations at some point in their lives. They're going to either be parents, or they're going to be taking care of their parents. And we can choose to have children, but we can't choose to have parents, at least not yet. But the point is that we expect that all of our workers are going to have care obligations and are going to need what I call deep flexibility and lots of support. And that we just assume that's not something that we have to worry about for women because women are going to have children and we've got to worry about it for them. It's everybody. So we think about family leave and family support and ways of working that allow everyone to have that foundation in family that allows them to do their best work.
Mm-hmm. And Indra, as the CEO of PepsiCo, how does that take place, that revolution?
Well, let's go back to what Anne-Marie said. We've been in this revolution mode for many, many years, for decades, in fact, because first it was just getting entry into this boys' club. So how did we get entry into boys' club? We fought for it. We clawed our way a little bit. And then we decided to do something much more intelligent. We got all the degrees and we got all the topping grades in school. And all of a sudden, they had to take notice of us. And then we became all the gatekeepers to all the shopping experiences. So now, if you don't have the women, you don't have a business. So we clawed our way into this revolution in this workplace. And then we needed parity in pay. Not yet there. We're still fighting for that. We still have to have, equal treatment. I mean, I hate being called sweetie or honey at times, which I still am called, okay? So all that's got to go. We've got to be treated as executives or people rather than honey or sweetie or babe. So that has to change. And then with all of this talk about how can the sisterhood help each other, we talked about lean in, pull people up. We've done that part too. What we've ignored through all of this is, fine, we're going to help women in the workplace, but how are we going to help this interaction between the woman and her personal life? Because at the end of the day, we also want to be, if we want to be, wives, daughters, daughters-in-law, sisters, whatever, we want to play that role too. And society wants us to play that role. So what have we done so far? We've given people maternity leave. Great, 12 weeks maternity leave, 16 weeks maternity leave, paternity leave, that's great. But at the end of that period, that little infant is only 4 months old or 3 months old. What are we supposed to do? Just drop the baby at home and home alone and go to work? It doesn't work. So we haven't yet talked about the big revolution in terms of how can society, governments, companies, and families help women actually complete the revolution. Anne, you wrote a great book on unfinished business. We got to finish the business, okay? We know it's unfinished, but if we don't finish the business ourselves, somebody else is not going to finish it for us. So we've got to start thinking of what happens to that next generation that we produce, and how are we going to help this whole ecosystem do a better job bringing those young people into the world and making them people too.
So you two should write the book called Finishing the Business.
I think we need to. More than a book, though. We actually have to make it happen.
And implement it. But you are one of those 4% of those Fortune 500 CEOs. How did you do it?
Not easy. I mean, I tell you a painful story. The other day, when we moved back to our headquarters in Purchase after renovation, I had the opportunity to go through all my old mail, and I found a letter that my daughter had written to me, my second daughter. And I joined PepsiCo when she was 18 months old. And I lived in the company. I just worked all the time. And my desk was being given away to get a new desk. And she said, Mom, you can't give away that desk. I said, why not? She said, I slept in this little area underneath your table with my blankie all the time I was growing up. How can you give this desk away? And I sat back and said, my God, what a memory for her to have.
Yeah.
And then I was going through the files. There's a letter from her to me, which I'm keeping because I have to remind myself of what I lost. It says, Dear Mom, I love you. Please come home. Please, 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 please come home. I love you, but I love you more if you came home. This is my 4 or 5-year-old writing these notes. So how did I do it? Huge number of sacrifices, huge number of sacrifices, trade-offs. And I think through it all, I might be a CEO today, and I love the job, I love where I am, but I will tell you, if I had to write a letter to myself as a younger person, I'd say, be careful about all the choices you're making, because you will look back and it'll hurt like hell, and it does.
Mm-hmm. But do you regret it?
Regret is too serious a word. The heart aches many times. And it's not regret. I love what I'm doing. I may have regretted not doing it had I just stayed home and spent all my time with them. So this is a very regret is a very complex word, simple word that's got deep meaning.
That is so, I mean, I'm the other half in another
Yeah.
way. I mean, so when you were telling that story, I was thinking when my son, my elder son, was in first grade, he was asked to draw a picture of his family. So he drew mother, father, his brother, and himself. And he drew me as a laptop. And not a person on a laptop. That would have at least had me. Just a laptop. And he drew his father cooking. And I looked at this. We put it on the fridge. And I thought, oh, great. My child thinks I'm a computer, right?
Right.
and it was sort of this moment, as you said, with the desk where at that point I thought maybe, I should put the laptop away. But it's...
But those images are also important for another reason, aren't they?
Which
I mean,
is?
I know you feel guilty about it, but what's the other message that sent to your children?
I mean, actually, I was funny. I put that story's in my book, and my elder son was reading the book, and he said, Mom, I did not. And I said, oh, yes, you did. So, I mean, it obviously didn't scar him for life. He doesn't remember that was something he did. I think it's what Indra said, that at that moment, I thought, okay, time to make a little adjustment. I mean, at that point, I really was managing. We had 2 kids. I was a dean. But, we could do it because I lived and my home and my work were within a half mile of each other. Their school was a half mile. We were making it work. Later, it's actually, Indra, when you say, thinking about looking back, when I had to decide not only to leave the State Department, but not to put my hat back in 2012, what I kept thinking was, my children have 4 more years left at home, and I know at the end of my life, if I look back and think I missed that, I'm going to think I made the wrong choice. But in my case, it was, I was going to have to go back to Washington and just not see them at all. But I think it is that sort of, what is the balance between the value on both sides, the value of care and the value of being a really successful woman making a big difference in the world.
But Norah, what we're not saying is we need to take back the gains we've made and have women go back to just staying at home. That's not what we're saying.
Not at all.
I think the big unfinished business in the next revolution is, how can society, the workplace, companies, everybody together, and families work together to address all of these issues? How can we allow women to have a productive career, because countries need women in the workplace, because we are 50% or more of the population. We are 60% of the graduating classes in many, many colleges, and we are 75% of the top grades.
Absolutely.
So the best and brightest are sitting right here. And so I think we need to make sure we provide an environment where we can productively and gainfully allow women to use their skills, but also allow them to do everything else.
What's the challenge as the CEO of a big company to extending parental leave and paying for it like some of the Silicon Valley companies are doing?
So extended to what? Let's say we go from 12 to 24 to 52 weeks. At the end of 52 weeks, that infant is still a year old. And so I think what we have to sit down and talk about is, there are two issues with extending parental care. First, when somebody takes a maternity leave and goes for 12 or 16 weeks, somebody still has to do the job that that person vacated for 12 to 16 weeks. What we tried to do was reallocate the responsibility to the rest of the work group. The rest of the work group came to me and said, Indra, thank you for giving this person the time off. This was taking care of a sick parent. Appreciate it, you're very caring, but we all have families to go to. We can't take on the additional work. So I think we have to sit down and ask ourselves the question, what kind of a job is that person going to come back to? And the longer they stay away, how can we keep that job open? That's the first challenge. The second challenge is if they're away for a year, 2 years, they've lost their place in the queue. And believe it or not, there is a queue. And you've lost your place in the queue. And they're now with a different cohort group and they don't like it because they feel like they really came in with a different class and they're going with a different group. People don't like it. So we have to figure out how can they come back to work quickly, but we can ease them in and then allow them to also have the time with the kids. Example, we're looking at building a daycare center on the PepsiCo campus because we have 1,800 people on the campus, a daycare center. But a daycare center where there's also sick baby care upstairs so that if your child is sick, you can bring them in. A daycare center is fully technologically wired so you can see what's going on. Qualified daycare people, qualified daycare people. Many of us have daycare help. There's no training, no certification of daycare workers. That's who takes care of our kids. So we come to work with the fear and the pit of our stomach, always. We don't have to be that way. So what if companies were to step in and say, we're going to provide this for our employees. You have to pay for it. It would be nice if governments gave us a tax relief because we are helping society. But we have to come up with these solutions because if we don't, who is going to?
Mm-hmm. What did you do when your children would call into work asking for something?
Well, because of my Indian heritage, even though we had nannies helping us, we had grandparents supervising the nannies because we never trusted any of the nannies. So we had, we put a list together. We went to the entire extended family, his side, my husband's side, and my side, and said, would you like a vacation in the United States? They said, sure. So we give you a 3-month vacation, and for 2 months, you stay in our home and supervise the nanny. For 1 month, we'll give you a ticket to go around the US. And then the rest of the time, my parents or his parents stepped in just to supervise the nannies, okay? But I think when we have a society that's aging, and we have women that are working, let's figure out a way to bring the aging parents to be the supervisors of the daycare and figure out a way to get qualified daycare and make society work.
On that very point, this is a very important point, and I know you both care deeply about this. Almost 20% of the population now live in multi-generational households. That is double the number from the 1980s. Look at the White House. Even Michelle Obama's mother is living in the White House and helping with the 2 girls there. Is that one solution? Do we need to think larger about our support systems? As a CEO, we build support systems at work. Do we need to think in a larger way about building a family support system at home?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we do. And extended family care is a very big piece of the puzzle that is becoming bigger already, but it's also, there's a cultural difference here. As Indra says, that's not at all uncommon in India that you have grandparents living together or uncles and aunts with parents. And actually, if you think about how the United States population is changing, and you think about Indian Americans and African Americans and Hispanic Americans and East Asian Americans, all other cultures, pretty much, other than traditional white Anglo-Saxon Protestant America, much more likely to have extended family living. And it's much more likely below the very top. When you actually look at the figures in many states, families live together to support each other. But we still imagine, the family is the four-person unit, or the however many. For one thing, you've got lots of single parents, and single parents who are depending on extended family. Thinking about that, thinking about how you support it in terms of real estate, how you support it in terms of company policies, and then, the place I would say we can help this revolution. Everybody in this audience knows that the United States and Papua New Guinea are the only two countries in the world that don't have paid maternity leave. You've heard that 10 times. That's right, but this is the one place where America might actually be able to leapfrog the rest of the world. Like many countries that never had landlines and they went directly to cell phones, we can bypass the whole maternity, paternity, parental leave issue and go directly to paid family leave. Paid family leave for whether you're caring for children or caring for parents or caring for an ill spouse, whoever it is, and equally available to men and women. So imagine if you had a child and the father and the mother both get 6 weeks, but then they also get time as they need later to care for parents or for others.
And Anne-Marie, to your point, you say that is the first step in valuing care.
Yes,
in valuing care.
exactly.
But the second step, I think, as Indra has said here too, what after then those first couple of months? What's then the solution towards building a system that supports a woman in the workplace who wants to have a family at home too?
Look, I don't know about all of you, but in my home, I've got the most supportive husband. 35 years, something like that. I don't remember. Some 30
My husband always says, "You never remember."
You sound like the man saying you can't remember the anniversary. What's the anniversary date?
This way, it's forever. I've been married to him, okay? And he's awesome. He's awesome, all right? I got to tell you, he's awesome. Very supportive, very helpful. But if he's home and the kids are missing something, they pull me out of a meeting to ask me where it is. So I tell him, "Hey, Dad's home. Why don't you ask him?" He'll never know where it is. But the fact of the matter is, we are it. We are it for everything. So I think we have to come up with the solutions. We keep saying one of the solutions is equality. Make the husband help you out. If they do that, that's awesome. But let's not count on that. Let's figure out solutions. Let's figure out our own.
Don't agree.
What?
I don't agree.
And then what happens is, if we figure out our solutions and if they become part of the helping out, that's just awesomeness personified. So till then, let's just figure out our own solutions. So what do we need to do? I think companies can help. And I think we ought to lobby Washington like hell to get bigger tax breaks when we pay for daycare. And I think the voice of women cannot be ignored. And we've got to do it in a coordinated way. We've got to ask for this and get it. It can't be just daycare facilities. It's got to be sick baby care. When our kids go to school, they're germ factories. I mean, they get a cold, they get a fever all the time. And when they're at home sick, I'm constantly checking my phone. I used to. Now my kids are grown up. Constantly, are they okay? Are they doing well? So how about sick baby care? So you can bring the child to work and put them in the sick baby ward, so you can run over to the daycare center and look them up. What's wrong? They're still children. They need to be cared for. Third, I think, like a vocational school, we have to insist that daycare certification centers be open. We are asking people to take care of the most vulnerable of the world. Not a lathe or a drill machine, but little babies. And there is no certification program, there's no vocational training, and we just hire a random person to take care of our kids. We ought to put in vocational schools for daycare. And 4, we have to work with, Anne-Marie and I are working on this, how do we work with the developer to build some prototype communities where you've got a community maybe of 500 families, young people. The young people live on the outside. In the second circle are the parents or the relatives that want to have homes there. And the center is a community center where accredited daycare workers can take care of the kids, but the aging parents have to take turns to supervise the daycare workers.
This is like the perfect family culture environment.
But we have to create these things. They don't just happen, we have to create it, all right?
But
Everybody
you're a CEO.
cannot be Indian. Everybody
what's
cannot.
the impediment to creating that? What's the impediment?
We've just started this dialogue, Anne-Marie and I. So from PepsiCo's perspective, we'll build the daycare center, but we can't build the development communities.
Yeah.
So we'd love to have one progressive developer join up with us. We will design this with a wonderful architect. And then we have to start playing with these communities, because I think the sisterhood has to become way stronger than it is today. I really believe that. Yeah.
Well, well, in the first place, the demographics push in that direction, right? The real estate developers are building more multi-generational kind of arrangements, in part, as we know, the baby boomers, 10,000 people are retiring every day. Most of us can't afford to retire. I mean, even those of us who know better haven't saved enough, and most people can't. So what you see are parents moving back to be closer to their children. They care for the children when they're young, and then as they age, it returns. I want to just say one word on husbands, and I will just say for a moment, I don't believe in a lot of biological differences, but the phenomenon called male looking, where you open the cabinet and you say, where's the peanut butter? And it's right here. It's really
Totally.
So there are biological differences, but I have to say my husband would take issue with you on, he thinks he's a better parent than I am, and I don't agree, let's be clear. But I actually do think men can do more, and if we expect them to. But the piece I want to really comment on that is so important is Indra's point about paying our care workers, because we now know the first 5 years of a child's life, you are not just teaching that child knowledge, you are shaping his or her brain. You are determining what he or she will be able to learn for the rest of his or her life. So from the point of view of our own individual children, but also society, if we want to have people who are going to be able to defend us, to have a competitive economy, to rectify inequalities, those first 5 years, and actually teenage years too, are essential. And yet we pay our care workers the same wage that we pay people to mix our drinks or park our cars or walk our dogs. And that's crazy.
I agree.
It's just crazy.
Agree. And Norah, any way you look at it, and I've said this before, our career clock and our biological clock are in conflict with each other. Yes. Totally in conflict. So we have to figure out a way to resolve our conflicts, because nobody else is going to. And for those of you who know my husband, please tell him I said he is awesomeness personified. I don't want him to hear that I went on stage in this beautiful Koch theater and said that he's not supported. He is awesome. But he's a man. Oh God, please. Yeah, when the peanut butters moved 6 inches to the right, he said, had it been 6 inches to the left, I would have found it. 6 inches, give me a break. But he's awesome, I gotta tell you.
There are other things they do.
How important is it to deal with conflict or comments that are sexist with humor?
Well, I'll just say what I was
Because
saying.
I think the inclination, of course, is to immediately call someone on the mat for it. What's the best way to deal with that? How have you dealt with it?
Well, I listened to Barbara Byrne yesterday at New America. McKinsey rolled out its Power of Parity report in the United States. And Barbara, who is vice chair of Barclays and had a long history in finance, she said, well, women are always called difficult. Right? And she said, and then she said, my file is full of difficult. I am really, really difficult. And she did it in this way, and she said, you could just see her doing that in a meeting, but in a way that there's a truth there, right? Absolutely. If you're a woman who gets things done, you have sharp elbows, you're difficult, the very attributes that on a man would say he's a go-getter. With a woman, it's typically there's something negative. But I thought her point about deflecting or speaking truth but doing it in a joking way was very important. And I was saying Indra is a master of managing to, use humor, I think, in a very effective way.
I try. But people do call you difficult. They say things behind your back. But we all know that's the price of entry and the price of moving up this chain. So we have to figure out our own coping mechanisms. But I think there's a bigger issue that we have to talk about. I don't believe women help women enough in the workplace. And if there is one thing that we can do for ourselves is get the best behavioral psychologists to design programs that address this issue on why do women compete with women too much in the workplace? Because when I hear young girls say today, God, I wish I was in an office where there were more men, or I wish my boss was a man because it's tough to work with a lot of women. I'm going, are you nuts? You should be thrilled you're working with so many women. But then I hear the stories and I go, what's wrong with us women? We ought to be helping each other out. And I'll give you an example, and this is from my own experience at PepsiCo. Some of you may have heard this before. Many times we're in a presentation, and the guy is giving a presentation, not going so well. We call a break. They go to the men's room. Hey, Bill, that was awful, your presentation. Fix it, man, don't gesture so much. A little fist bump, they come back, and Bill's doing fine, okay? A woman does a terrible job, and you walk into the women's room and you go, Mary, that was terrible. What were you doing? God, she's so bitchy. No, I'm trying to give you constructive feedback. So what we do is we assume that feedback from women means something is wrong. But if that same feedback came to us from men, we're willing to accept it. Or worse still, we don't give the feedback to women the way we should, even though we know that they're not doing well, because we go, good, she's struggling, I can take that position. I think we have to change our whole approach to supporting each other, taking advice from each other, seeking it out. One thing I feel very badly about, all my mentors in life have been male. But then I sit back and say, maybe I came into the workforce at a different time. But I think we have to change the dialogue. So if there's one plea I have for everybody in this room, let's figure out how we can help each other way more than we are today.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
I also think it has to do with how we describe the behavior of our daughters. And I happen to have 8-year-old twins and a 7-year-old, and my 8-year-old daughter likes to tell the kids at the birthday party where to sit when they get their cupcake. So I have written about this, and I turned to one of my friends when my daughter Grace was telling everybody where to sit, and I said, geez, I'm so sorry. Grace is telling everybody what to do. And she said, oh, Norah, please, Grace has executive leadership skills. So I got T-shirts printed up that said, I have executive leadership skills, and I got about 20 of them, and she gives them to her friends. But not bossy, you have executive leadership skills in describing not only our children that way, our friends' children's, but the women we work with in that way. They have executive leadership skills.
Otherwise, as some people would say, you're not marriageable.
Yes.
Here's the problem.
Well, that's what I was told growing up, right?
Exactly right.
Yep.
Have one mouth and 10 years.
Yep.
Not the other way around. Right.
There's one other issue I want to hit on quickly, too, because we've talked about childcare, but the other issue, too, is aging parents. Yep. And I know each of you feel strongly about that. The challenge that will present for a CEO of corporations, what that means for the workplace.
I mean, this goes back to another way that we can make room for care when we think about careers. And again, from my point of view, it's for men as well as women, which will take a while, but we've got to get there. You think about your career, I like to think about it in terms of phases. And I'm about to enter what I call phase 3. And phase 3, is when your kids are out of the house. I'm praying that means college, but regardless, out of the house. Where I will be, in my late 50s, and I think of myself as having 10 to 20 years of really productive work ahead of me. In that period, right, that's often a period where your kids are out of the house, but your parents then are aging. And so we have to think about these periods where in your 30s or your 40s, whenever you have kids, there may be a period where you're going to need more time to take care of your kids. And later, there may be a period where you're going to need more time to take care of your parents. But the point is, it shouldn't at any point knock you out. It can knock you you can be on a slower track, no question. You're not going to compete as fast as those people who don't have care obligations. But you should be able to say, okay, I'm gonna need to take this period. I'm gonna just need to have more time at this point to take care of my parents. And you need an extended family setting. But then I'm still going to be able to go fast when I want to. And there's no reason not to do that. It's just that we are accustomed to thinking of workers as people who have someone else at home doing those caregiving obligations. And if that's not true for women and for men, then we have to make room for care.
Indra?
We are aging too. We're going to be part of this aging parents cohort group pretty soon. And I talked to you about this letter that I saw from my daughter. My older daughter has many journal entries where she's missing mom too. The last Labor Day weekend, my husband and I kept waiting for our 2 kids to come home. And we kept going to the window saying, maybe they're coming now, maybe they're coming now. And they didn't come until Monday evening. We were so mad. But then we sat back and said, that's how they felt when we didn't come back from work on time. And we missed them so much now. So I come back and I go, in a few years, they're going to have kids, I hope, and we're going to be the aging parents, hoping that they would come, hoping they'd incorporate us in their life. So we've turned the tables a little bit, and we told them, have all the kids you want, we'll take care of all your kids. Till we are alive and breathing, we will take care of all your kids. And we will pay for everything. Just have them, give them to us, go work, go on vacations, do anything you want. We are going to be Indian parents on steroids, okay?
And free Pepsi products.
Totally. I will do everything for them. We'll hire the best certified daycare to work with us, everything. Model kids, we're going to develop model grandkids. Why are we doing this? Not because that's our only goal in life. We'd like to travel. We'd like to spend some time as a couple too. But we want our kids back with us because I'm afraid to let go, okay? Because I didn't spend much time with them when they were young. So I think there's a way for society to take aging parents, the children and the grandchildren, and create a supportive ecosystem where all of society improves as opposed to everybody struggling with, when am I going to see my kids? How am I going to take care of my kids? Let's solve it by bringing the aging, the middle-aged, kids who are having kids, and the little kids all together to be a supportive system. And I think that's the next revolution.
It also has all sorts of benefits in the sense that your kids will often take things from your parents or from grandparents that they'd never take from you, right? I can say something to my son and he'll say, absolutely not. My mother, manages to say it, and that's a whole different thing. True. So they're very different relationships there.
Can you have it all?
Norah, that's not fair. I said. So Norah said afterwards, she said, I think I disagree with you on having it all. And I said, in the first place, I don't use that phrase ever if I can avoid it. Because I frankly think to all of us here, it feeds an elitist narrative that none of us have any interest in disseminating. I mean, what we're seeing now in the country increasingly is, and you're seeing it in supporters of Bernie versus supporters of Hillary, is this sense that there's this elite white corporate feminism and then there's everybody else, and having it all, just kind of talking about having it all is a bad idea. So
but the discussion should be focused on finishing the business.
It should be talking, I think it should be focused absolutely on finishing the revolution, on finishing the business, on valuing care, and on confidence. I mean, these are all pieces of it. But so I never said you couldn't have it all. I said we are not where we need to be unless we make a whole nother set of changes. So I don't like to think of it in terms of having it all, but can women and men have wonderful careers and strong families at the same time? Absolutely. Do we still need to make a revolution in our cultural attitudes, our workplaces, and our government policies to get there? Absolutely.
And continue to fight for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Well, Anne-Marie Slaughter, Indra Nooyi, let's finish the business. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.